welcome everyone to my session of today, how to fail in user adoption. And I will give you 5 steps or 5 examples how you can mess it all up, and hopefully also how you can avoid those missteps during your user adoption journey. And of course, also welcome to Teams Nation. And as I talked with Michael before this presentation, I really love Teams Nation. It's one of my favorite online conferences, and also I think it was like one of my first online conferences in Oktoberfest in 2019 or something like that, many years ago. But we have so many cool, interesting presentations here for you today, and I think most of them are being recorded. So if you are missing some presentation, you can go and check those. Michael doesn't want to fail. You can check those presentations from Teams Nation YouTube after this day. Yeah. So yes, I will also tell you how you can avoid those fails, so you will hopefully not mess up with your user adoption in the future. Okay, but let's get on with my presentation. So I'm Karoni Kettukari, and I'm from Finland. And at the moment we have very sunny outside. Yeah, it's very nice, very sunny. We also have quite warm in here. It's like +10, +11 degrees, which is super warm for March in Finland. So very nice. I work as a modern work lead at a Finnish company called Medlake, and basically everything we do revolves around developing teamwork, developing internal communications in large organizations. And one of those things I'm super interested in at the moment is modern internal communications as a whole concept. So not only about SharePoint, but SharePoint and Teams and Yammer and Vivo Connections and everything that's around it. And I think that would also be a great theme for a presentation, but not today. And I'm also co-hosting Teams Community Finland user group with Vesku and Matti and all of my other community friends. So if you are Finnish, or if you understand Finnish just a bit, please, you're welcome to join our monthly meetings in Teams. And also you can find me from LinkedIn, from Twitter. I haven't actually been that active in LinkedIn lately, but I try to be. It's all these like Corona ending and other like depressing things. But now it's spring, sun shining, and it's great to be here today. So I think everything is super fine. Yeah, and I think you are seeing my deck. Yes, okay, cool. So everything should be okay. But we have many great things I want to share with you today. So let's get on with the actual topic of my session today. I have 5 different horror stories maybe for your convenience. I have gathered my experiences from my Teams implementation projects, from my SharePoint projects, internet projects, and also some competitions and public tenders about how you should maybe not do things. And even though I have like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in here, these are not in any particular order. So 1 is not more important or more common than 5, etc. And yeah, I will try to give you some real concrete ideas, concrete use cases, because most of the time when we have all of these references, case stories in our websites, they are only about the cases that have been very successful. But I think the places where we learn the most are when we have some difficulties, when we have some cases that actually hasn't gone that well. So that's why I also wanted to share with you these horror stories so that you can learn from them, as I have hopefully also learned myself. Cool. Number 5, and I also already told you about this, or this was written in the session description, so it was a bit of a spoiler. So the first, or number 5 in this case, story of today is that we are not doing any user adoption at all. And I think this very well was the case maybe 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So user adoption was this very rare unicorn, which maybe I believed in it, but I rarely saw it. And I have like this food theme here in my presentation. Maybe I was like hungry when I did the pictures, so I hope you have eaten today as well. But yeah, user adoption seemed to be like this unicorn that never really existed. And the thing is that 5 years ago, 3 years ago, organizations wanted to buy technical implementations. So organizations wanted to renew their SharePoint intranet, make it from on-premises to modern, or from on-premises to cloud, whatever. Or they wanted to implement Teams in their organization. And the problem with these technical implementations are that it's humans, it's us people who are using those technical tools. And actually last week I was in Aalto University, which is I think maybe the biggest university in Finland. And in the Aalto University I had a lecture about organizational change. And I told the story about how change management theories and theories about how organizations change they're like beauty product advertisements. So they promise you a lot, but they also give you false hope. And this is the case with technical implementations as well, because we tend to forget that we are actually humans, and organizations don't change, but humans as people in the organizations, we have the possibility to really change and change our ways of working. And the thing is that organizations are, at least in Finland, maybe not anymore in these couple of years, but in the past, have just wanted to buy these technical implementation projects. One really horror story about this one is that we have this huge public tender process in Finland. So in Finland, every public organization has to give their implementations to a public competition, or open it into a public competition. So it's called a tender. And they had this like huge project with like 3 years, millions of euros to create this technical product, or create this technical environment. And within these like millions of euros, they had defined that please give us 20 technical trainings. So you can use hundreds of thousands of euros or dollars into coding or into planning something. And then it's just like, yeah, you have this 20 trainings. It's okay, people will learn. No, people won't learn. And I think this is a two-sided problem or two-sided issue, because organizations don't know what they should buy, and the consultants, we are too often selling what the customer wants, which is the technical implementation. So the first step to avoid is, by not doing any adoption at all, is to, if you are a customer, you should think about adoption already when you are planning your technical implementation. And if you are a consultant, you should really try to convince your customer to also buy user adoption within the project. Steve said in the chat that he has never heard that customer doesn't know what they want. I actually have a couple of more examples of that later on. So let's see if Steve gets more information from that one. Okay, but we must move on. So fail number 4 or misstep number 4, you are doing a wrong project. And this is very closely related to the first misstep, which is that you are not doing any user adoption at all. And this is also the thing that customers are doing wrong things, or customers are asking for wrong things. And the thing is, now we have avocados, so not like unicorn muffins, but avocados. And the thing is that we may have a very, very successful technical implementation project. We may do a very new, cool, shiny new SharePoint internet. But when it comes, like 1 year passes, 2 years go on, nothing has really changed. Or maybe even after the initial launch, you will hear feedback from the customer or from the employees that, yeah, this SharePoint is really cool, but I still can't find my news. So the initial project, so the technical implementation the customer wanted, it was a success, but it didn't change anything in the organization. And this happens because the customer has no idea what they really need. And usually the project team or the manager who wants to buy something, they know what they want. So they, for example, want one SharePoint, thank you. But usually, this is pretty sad actually, they have not listened to the end users. And they don't actually know what is the working life like, what's the everyday work life, the devices, tools, communication methods the end users are dealing with every day. And then the technical implementation and the idea that the project team may have in mind might be very different from the reality of the end user. And I have one great example of this. This maybe wasn't a horror story, or it was at the first, but then it turned into a success story. Because this is a large Finnish organization, global organization, and they had an on-premises internet, so pretty old SharePoint, technically not up to date, and they wanted to renew the internet. So they had this project team, and they had a RFP. Please, we want a new internet. Can you please tell us how much does it cost? How fast can we make it? And we talked with the customer for a couple of times. They were also talking with other partners, with other consultancy firms. And then when we had talked with the customer a couple of times, we actually came into the conclusion that the internet was not their problem. Their problem was that the whole digital work environment, the whole digital tools were not in use, and the messages from, for example, the communications department to the end user were lost in the way. So we thought that maybe we should stop for a bit. Let's not do an internet project, because the internet doesn't solve your problems. But maybe stop and think about what are your real challenges. We should ask from your end users, from your employees all around the globe, from every department, what's the challenge in your actual work with, for example, communications. And then we should think about how can we solve those challenges. And actually this company did that. So they stopped the internet competition progress, and they did this service design phase where we actually had many workshops, many interviews, and engaging people all around the company to really discover the current state of internal communications in the company. And as a result, yes, they needed an internet. It was one point, but they also needed a chatbot. They also needed a champions network. They also needed a very heavy support project for their field workers. They also needed an internal owner for this whole project, and we will get back to internal owners in a little bit later. So actually, this wrong project thing is a very tricky one, because you should have the courage to say to the buyer, to say to the customer, that what if we should stop for a minute? What if we should rethink this whole thing? But if you succeed, you are really able to create this whole user adoption vision, modern work vision, M365 upper level vision. And then you have steps how you can get there. And instead of just having the internet project you are doing, you may have 5 different projects you are doing with the customer. And that also means that you have more, it's more possible to succeed in your project and change things in organization. I know you have like so many comments in the chat, but you are so chatty at the moment, so I can't really follow the chat. So I try to maybe ask some questions, and then we can discuss about the chat after the presentation as well. Yeah, we won't use Skype for Business anymore. Okay, great. So this was number 2 or number 4, because my numbers are other way around. We are simply doing a wrong project. Cool. Then number 3, and this is very common. I think this was even more common a couple of years ago, but I still hear this in a lot of projects, in lots of tenders. And it's mistaking training for user adoption. So training is not user adoption. And here we have, I think, apples, like caramelized apples. I don't know, hopefully those are good. Okay, so we have this 0-point project, and we have these end user trainings. Welcome and see how your new internet is running. And then the organization is very happy because we have focused on user adoption by offering technical trainings. And then when times go by, we see that no change has happened. No one seemed to remember what we did in those technical trainings. And this is also some real customer feedback we had gotten. The customer wanted to buy Teams technical trainings. We said to the customer that, yeah, it's no use. We can do those trainings, but nothing changes. And the customer said, we want those trainings, nothing more. Okay, we did those Teams trainings. And then one feedback from one attendee from one training was that this general training was no use to me, because I don't see how these things we learned in this training have to do with my real life day-to-day work. And I think that was so on point. We have all of these video libraries, free trainings. If you're, for example, talking about M365 or Microsoft Teams, you can use Vivo Learning. You have the learning pathways in Vivo Learning. You have the help in Teams where you have all of those different Teams videos. Have you watched those? They're really cool. So many videos about Teams. But if we are focusing on technical trainings in our user adoption, it really doesn't solve the issue and it really doesn't change the behavior of the people in the organization. And this happens because it's easy to buy trainings. It's easy to say that, hey, please give us 20 technical trainings. They are like, 20,000 euros. And it's easy to buy, but it doesn't work. And how we can avoid this misconception is, of course, that we should think training as not a separate thing where you can watch like 10 videos per day, but how you can tie the training within your work context. So, for example, we have a team, and this is what we have done in many of our customers. So you have a team, or you have a small department, and we want them to start using Teams more effectively in their teamwork. So what we do, of course, we can say that, hey, go to Vivo Learning, you can watch those basic videos about Teams, so you know which buttons to push. But then we sit down together. So we have a workshop, it can be remotely, it can be hybrid, whatever goes, but the team sit down together. And the team then thinks together that how does our workday look like? What communication tools, devices I use? Have I checked my notification settings? If I want to send a message to my colleague, do I use Teams? Do I send an email? Do I use WhatsApp? Please don't use WhatsApp for work purposes. And in this way, the technical training is tied to the real working context. And it stays in your mind way better than if you would just watch a video online. And then we can go also deeper. So if you have an Excel, you are dealing with your team every day, every week, then you can think about how could that Excel transform into a planning planner? Could it be a list in Teams? Could we maybe automate something or do workflows for some parts of the Excel so that we don't have to do this copy-paste manual work that much in the future? And yeah, of course, it takes time. It's time consuming. It takes resources, but this is how it should be done. Technical trainings are better than nothing, but it doesn't change the organization. Technical trainings are not real user adoption. And I think one of the reasons we are talking about technical training so much is that when we lived in the on-premises world, the environment didn't change after we once implemented it. So if we did an on-premise SharePoint, it was the same like 5 years to come. And then it was okay if I had that one training, I had that like 50 pages PDF, and I can also go and see on instructions for everything. But Teams is in the cloud, M365 is in the cloud, and we have like new buttons, we have new solutions, we have new applications in Teams almost every week. And no amount of time and no amount of like simple technical training can cover that all. So instead of trying to keep up to date and train everything to everyone, maybe focus a bit more and tie those technical trainings within the team context or within the project context. Cool. I like that someone said that if they talk about Slack, they want to take a bath and go play somewhere else. No, Slack is okay. We have options. Cool. Number 2. And I think this is maybe the misstep or the fail that I face the most at the moment in my own projects, in my own customers. So those previous ones, maybe for me, they were a big issue in 3 years ago, 5 years ago, but not maybe anymore. But this one, no internal ownership, is, I think, the fail I face the most at the moment. And this is also very, very tricky one because it requires responsibility. And for some reason, people tend to run away when they hear the word responsibility. But yeah, we have maybe some things we can do in here as well. Okay. I have this popcorn picture in here because I have a story to tell. And this was a large Finnish organization a couple of years ago. And the thing is that they had 2 different departments, 2 different parts of the organization, which were having this Game of Thrones kind of battle fight between each other. So the departments were fighting over who has the biggest say over the tools we are using, who can say that we should use SharePoint for our internet news, and who is the winner in this battle. And it happened that they were doing the similar things, like similar user adoption things without even knowing. And it was very overlapping. So basically, we lost a lot of money, a lot of time, for the ownership wasn't clear and the ownership wasn't defined. It was like this Game of Thrones situation with internal fighting, internal battles. And that's, of course, the maybe even worse than having no ownership whatsoever. 2 owners, it may be difficult, but no ownership is also very, very difficult. And the thing is that usually before, IT was the responsible. IT was the owner, and IT still is the owner for the platform. So if you want to do a modern internet project, the IT usually owns the SharePoint and the M365 part of the project. But as we also have said today, M365 projects, internet projects, are not technical implementations. We are not living in this empty box with our technical tools, but we have all of these people around using those tools. And when the technical project, so for example, the new SharePoint, is out, the SharePoint is launched, then usually, like all the pens drop in that place, and then there's no ownership what happens after the launch. So no one is responsible for user adoption. No one is responsible for the big picture of modern work or big picture of M365, especially from the employee experience point of view. And I think this is a really, really hard thing to sell in organizations, because usually it means that they should have one person or a whole team that will change their work responsibilities and really owns this certain one area. And why it's so difficult? I think it's because this kind of ownership is usually a cross-functional role. So it's not only the IT, it's not only communications, it also could be a bit of HR, especially if we go to talk about Viva Insights, or if we talk about employee experience, if we talk about Clint, it's all about HR. If we talk about Viva Learnings, it may be, for example, a person who is responsible for organizational learning. So in the end, the Microsoft Teams isn't an IT tool anymore, because it's the hub for teamwork, and it's basically everything that's happening during your workday. And that's a huge responsibility to take in an organization. So no wonder there aren't like so many eager hands if we ask that who is going to own this whole thing. And one horror story, or I have like several in this case, is that the customer wants, or the customer expects, the consultant to be the owner. And if you have attended the ProSci change management theory course, it's great actually. You should do it. I really recommend it. One of the things ProSci really states is that the consultant cannot be the owner of the change, but the owner has to come from within the organization. And I really agree with it. Even though it's just a theory, but in this case, it's a real thing. So if you ever are in a situation when the customer wants to buy user adoption project, or wants to do user adoption, wants to develop their modern work, and they have no responsible person inside their organization to drive the change through, to drive the project, you should be warned. So it's very difficult to really do any user adoption and to really change the organization, because that's what we are doing here if we don't have that internal ownership. And if you are a consultant, by all means support your organization and help the organization to drive the change in any way you can, but you cannot be the owner. You have to let it go. And yeah, I would so like to see the chat, what's going on in the chat, but there are so many chats going on, so I will take a look at those in a bit. Because we have our last fail or last misstep going on next. And if you have been hungry because of all of my nice food pictures in here, I should still warn you that it's not a good idea to try to eat the whole cake at once. And this is what many of my customers have tried to do. And yeah, one of the favorite sayings in user adoption is that user adoption is not a project. User adoption is a journey, and modern work is a journey that goes on and on and on. But we have done so many technical projects, technical implementations. So we have this internet project. Project done, internet launched, thank you, next project. We have this Teams implementation project. Teams licenses already. Teams has been available for everyone. We are done, thank you, next project. And now we are going into the gap between the technical project and the user adoption part. And the thing is that we have talked about this modern work roadmap, or how you should plan the user adoption long way ahead. And usually what happens is that we have these, yes, technical trainings, We have maybe some champions network even, but then we run out of resources, we run out of time, we run out of money. And at least when the consultant leaves the customer company, because they always do, consultants like never are within the customer like for 10 years. I think maybe sometimes they should be. At least then the user adoption will stop. And it's because we still think user adoption as part of the technical implementation project. Whether it should be more like continuous development plan and continuous development project, continuous project. Is that the thing? I don't know. Basically, we want to do things in an agile way. We want to have that continuous development plan. We follow those things we have planned in our roadmap. We follow the M365 roadmap. We follow our data we gather from our M365 environment, and we check our plan and we act accordingly. And I have had many cases and many projects where the project has been well. We have done lots of user adoption within the project. So, for example, Champions Network is up and running. We have everything up and running. Everything is going good. But then when the user adoption project ends, and I have left the customer, left the company, they have really not reserved resources, reserved time to continue the user adoption, to continue on with, for example, training the champions or training the new things, new parts that comes to the cloud environment. And then things start to deprecation pretty quickly because new people are coming in, old people are leaving, and the people, employees in the organization change also quite a bit. So how to avoid it? Yeah, I think like all of my missteps and all of my advices on how to avoid missteps like this are not that easy. This is time consuming. This takes a lot of resources. This takes a lot of money, both internally and if you want to hire a consultant, also it takes a lot of money. So none of this is easy, but you still should focus on user adoption. You still should focus on the long-term plan and continuous development, because that's how you can achieve change in your organization. Yeah, but changing is never easy. Cool. I'm nearly out of time, but I have one bonus slide for you, because everyone likes bonuses. So it's not easy. It's not quick. There are no quick fixes. But if you really want to succeed in user adoption, if you really want to see the change in the organization, you should think about the big picture. Do not buy wrong projects. Think about what are the real challenges and how you can start solving them one by one according to your roadmap. And stop thinking as technical implementations and user adoption as projects. They can be projects in your roadmap, but your roadmap should be maybe 2 years long, maybe even 3 or 5 years long, not like the 6 months that you usually have the visibility. If you're a customer, you have to own user adoption. You have to have an owner for modern work. And this is funny because every time I wrote this own it in this slide, just like immediately I like to move it starts ringing in my head. Sorry. But you have to own it. And if you are a consultant, you have to support it in any way you can, but do not own it. Let the customer do their job, and then you can support them in their modern work journey. Excellent. I think we are just on time. So thank you for everyone. I'll try to check the chat after this one. Please rate my session, show your love, attend all the other sessions and the keynotes in a couple of hours. I will share my session slides in social media. You can find them from Twitter after the presentation. And I hope you had some ideas, some insights about how you can fail in user adoption, and also hope you got some ideas how you can avoid those mistakes in the future in your own organization or with your clients. Thank you.